Am I the only one who didn't have spicy "Can you hear me now" Verizon guy on their 2024 bingo card? Since Israel blew up all the beepers a couple months ago, everywhere I go online, I see some half-cooked Israel-Palestine opinion that has little to no factual merit. In my neck of the woods, the lack of historical education makes my eyes twitch. Free Palestine! Stop Israelis' war crimes! Palestine is a victim. These comments abound, and in my humble opinion, it's time for all the facts to be laid out. Israel is located in the southern Levant region of West Asia. Israelis know it as the Land of Israel. Palestinians know it as the Holy Land, as well as some other Arabians. It originated as Canaan in roughly 10,000 BCE. It is the only country in the world with a revived language being Hebrew. There was quite a few other ethnic groups who descended from the Canaanites. Let me see. They were Lebanese, Syrians, Jordanians, Tunisians, Saudi Arabians, some Armenians, and fricking Palestinians. It is almost the most technologically advanced country in the world, second only to the US, obviously.
You're goddamn right.
They have the highest standard of living in West Asia, as well as one of the highest GDPs. The Iron Dome is a video unto itself, as well as some of its spy services like the Mossad. They would win in a fight with Russian Spetsnaz beyond a shadow of a doubt, and would actually hold their own against Navy SEALs. In case you're missing it, the point I'm trying to make is Israel's like the US. Don't mess with them. Throughout all of history, Israelis have proven resilient. I normally don't get religious, but when you understand the written word, you can't miss the constant references to God's people. Anti-Semitism can be found all throughout the history books, and the most amazing part of it is, instead of playing victim, Israel has basically just held the belief of, if you won't respect us, well, we'll just kick your ass until you leave us alone. A group of people named Israel first appeared in ancient Egyptian inscription in 1200 BCE. It began with the Kingdom of Israel, then became the Kingdom of Judah. Over time, they would be attacked and conquered by the Babylonian Empire, enslaved by the Roman Empire, and eventually tolerated by the Ottoman Empire, so long as they paid a tax. This is a point of history where I'm going to stop generalizing and get down to the dirty facts of just how disrespected Israel has been throughout history. We're going to pick up in July of 1914. Chaim Weizmann was a Russian-born chemist who developed the acetone butanol ethanol fermentation process, which made him quite successful. He would become involved in politics in World War I, eventually becoming the first president of Israel. He was the main reason the Balfour Declaration was signed. The only problem is, he wanted the declaration to only involve Britain and the Israelis, excluding the Arabs. Not very respectful of Chaim, if you ask me. You see, the Balfour Declaration was Britain's support for the creation of a Jewish national home in what was known at the time as Ottoman Syria. The Balfour Declaration was from UK's Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to Lord Rothschild. Yes, of those Rothschilds. I took a look at that history and had to stop because that is a hell of a rabbit hole. Now, I'm sure several people are upset at this point and want to say, oh, that's when Britain conquered Palestine and robbed the Palestinian people of their homeland. Okay. 1. There's never been an official state of Palestine. Yes, they declared independence, but in order to be a state, you need to have land, which officially they don't have any. Yet, but I'm going to get into that more in a bit. 2. It was actually a battle in the Middle Eastern theater of World War I, where the British, French, and Italians will fight alongside the Arab revolt against the Ottomans, the Germans, and the Austro-Hungarians, eventually leading to the secession of the Ottoman and Syria in 1918. In 1920, the land was divided between Britain and France under the Mandate system. The Arabs were completely opposed to this, leading to the 1920 Palestinian riots. In 1922, the League of Nations granted Britain the mandate for Palestine, basically splitting the land equally. Unfortunately, the rise of 1930s Germany, sorry not sorry, I'm not trying to be cancelled, would lead to a huge influx of migrating Jews, which was beginning to put the majority of the population in Jewish favor. Understandably, the Arabs were furious over this, as it leaned in favor of a two-state proposition more and more in Jewish favor. Now I hope y'all are sitting down because I'm about to kick the entire world in the nuts. While 1930s German political ideations, again, just trying to stay within the guidelines.
The code is more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules.
While East Europe bad guy views was the reason for the Jews fleeing Europe, multiple countries refused Jewish immigrants even after World War II ended, and this includes America. Think about it. After being forcibly removed from your home, being demoralized, and watching your loved ones be slaughtered, would you want to return to your home where your neighbors, who looked the other way, still resided? Probably not, and with no one welcoming immigrants, the land of Israel was beginning to look that much more enticing. With all this going on, and with the Aliyah Bet, a clandestine immigration of Jews to British-occupied Ottoman Syria, helping more and more Jews go to Israel, This seemed like a perfect problem for the newly formed United Nations to tackle. You see, after kicking the Ottomans out of Ottoman Syria during World War I, Britain would take the area as just another colony, steal all their spices, store them to never use, and call it Mandatory Palestine. And up until our current point in our history lesson, Britain failed to successfully negotiate a treaty because the Israelis refused any solution that did not involve a Jewish state. They envisioned a partition of Israel into Jewish and Arab states. The Arabs refused this, stating that a Jewish state in any part of the country was unacceptable and that the only solution they would accept was a unified Palestine under Arab rule. So now we have the Israelis willing to be diplomatic, while the Arabs tell them to kick rocks. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, a state of Palestine was not envisioned by anyone at this point. Anyone pro-Palestine is really pro-Arab. Just generalizing here, but basically, the report of the UN committee was its mission statement, and it said they wanted an independent state of Israel, an independent Arab state, and a Jerusalem ruled by both. Now you have to understand, there was a slew of extremist or terroristic groups of people on both sides at this time. You had the Irgun and the Haganah on the Israeli side, and the Fatah and the PLO, or the Palestinian Liberation Organization, on the Palestinian side. So fresh from World War I, the UN decided, hey, we're going to keep being adults, we're going to rule our lands equally, and we're not going to kill innocent civilians about it. Unfortunately, 2 months after the formation of the UN Council, the Irguns took 2 British soldiers, held them hostage, tortured them, executed them, hung their bodies from trees, and then, because all that wasn't enough, booby-trapped them. Why did they do this? This was caused by the Sergeant's Affair. The Irguns warned the British of their decision if they executed 3 Irguns captured during the Acre prison break, a situation they basically began themselves, breaking other members out of prison before being caught. So they waited until the execution of their friends, executed the British soldiers, hung them, and booby-trapped their bodies, injuring another British soldier who came to collect the bodies, and basically resulted in the withdrawal of the British cabinet from Mandatory Palestine. Where was the US during all this? We kinda had our hands full with the Cold War at the time. We may be the greatest superpower on the planet, but it doesn't mean we can be everywhere at once. I don't know who the hell I'm trying to kid. On November 11th, 1947, the UN adopted Resolution 181. Its original plan that gave Arabs roughly 43% of the mandate, Israel roughly 56% of the land, and the rest would be Jerusalem. It also said that there would be total British withdrawal by May 15th, 1948. So up until British evac, Israel was facing multiple Arab militia or gang attacks, which were fended off usually by Zionist paramilitary groups, or as I prefer to call them, terror groups. Remember, this is the land of Israel, and this is during the rise of Nazism and the Holocaust. Jewish migration to the area is up about 60% at this point, and no other countries are allowing entry to Jewish immigrants. As a matter of fact, the British even tried to block Jewish immigration to Israel with the White Paper of 1939. Fat lot of good that did, because thanks to the Mossad, immigrants were pouring in at record numbers. On May 14, 1948, the day before the British mandate expired, the head of the Jewish agency, David Ben-Gurion, declared the establishment of a Jewish state. The very next day, 4 Arab armies, Egypt, Syria, Transjordan, and Iraq, all invaded Mandatory Palestine, which sparked the 1948 Israeli-Arab War. Eventually, Yemen, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, and Sudan would join. Why did they invade? To restore order and prevent further bloodshed. Yeah, apparently Israel existing is a danger to society, but not making war to throw a temper tantrum because you want all the land to yourself. Eventually a ceasefire would be negotiated and the Green Line would be established, a demarcation line that was supposed to be temporary, but whose borders are still recognized to this day. It also resulted in the annexation of the West Bank and East Jerusalem by Jordan, and Egypt occupying the Gaza Strip. Over 700,000 Palestinians would flee in an event called Nakba, which led to the destruction of Palestine's society, culture, identity, political rights, and national aspirations. Just another mission unaccomplished in the actual dashing of the dream of a Palestinian state Israel was agreeing to, but hey, Israel shouldn't exist according to the other side of the table. Pretty on par for the times. I'm surprised they didn't sign for a friendship with Germany. During the 1950s, Palestinian militants frequently attacked Israeli citizens from the Egyptian-controlled Gaza Strip. In the mid-1960s, several Arab countries attempted to stymie Israel's headwaters out of fear the Israelis were going to divert the Jordan River into the coastal plain, which kind of backfired because it didn't just affect Israel, it also affected Lebanon and Syria, causing tension. During this time, Arab nationalists led by the Egyptian president refused to recognize Israel and called for its destruction. So now it's May 1967, Egypt staged its army on Israel's border, expelled UN peacekeepers, and blocked Israel's access to the Red Sea. Israel, not taking shit from anyone at this point, launched a preemptive strike on Egypt, causing Jordan, Syria, and Iraq to attack them. This would come to be known as the Six-Day War, a self-explanatory war that saw somewhere from 13,000 to 19,000 people killed. Now, before making assumptions, let me tally those numbers. Egypt had 10 to 15,000 killed or wounded. Syria would have 1,000 to 2,500 killed or wounded. Jordan had about 2 to 3,000 killed or wounded, and Israel would suffer 800 to 1,000 killed and wounded. Want to talk tanks and aircraft? Israel lost 400 tanks and had 46 aircraft destroyed. Everyone else? Hundreds of tanks lost and 450 or more aircraft destroyed. Okay, let's get this straight. Once again, countries unwilling to compromise like normal adults with Israel fucked around. Israel goes, fine. And bodies everyone. And as an added bonus, every time someone decides to pick a fight to lose with Israel, they end up losing territory as well. After the Six-Day War, Israel would capture the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, Sinai Heights, and Golan Heights. And now the Arab countries are really going to double down on not stopping their losing streak and sign a very interesting piece of paper that anyone pro-Palestinian and anti-Semitic hates to hear about: the signing of the 3 no's.
Hell no, to the no, 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 yeah, to the no, hell to the no, to the no, no, no.
And it states, no peace with Israel, no negotiations with Israel, and no recognition of Israel. Yeah, that is not a good look. This is why I get so mad when everyone blames Israel. Has Israel done some bad things? Absolutely. We all have. I mean, Japan sank a few boats, and we made them a couple of portable suns. Any country in existence has its skeletons in its closet. But overall, Israel is just trying to do their own thing, and these guerrilla groups are like the neighborhood bully trying to steal your brand new football. And now Palestinian groups weren't just attacking Israel, they were also attacking Jews around the globe. The late 1970s would finally see actual progress towards peace. In 1977, the Egyptian president made a trip to Israel, and in a speech before the Knesset, he would be the first Arab head of state to recognize the state of Israel. This is a huge deal. Okay, just 10 years ago, Egypt was prepping their army for war with Israel, and now they were finally putting the beef to rest and becoming diplomatic with them. After signing the Camp David Accords in 1978 and the Egypt-Israel Peace Treaty in 1979, Israel agreed to withdraw from the Sinai Peninsula and enter negotiations with Palestinians for autonomy in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. In 1992, Yitzhak Rabin became Prime Minister of Israel and was called upon to make peace with Israel's neighbors. The following year, he signed the Oslo Accords with the PLO. The accords were a declaration that both parties would spend the next 5 years establishing a Palestinian state that would unfortunately never come to fruition. In 1995, Rabin would be assassinated, and many believe this is what led to the talks falling apart. Again. Because nobody can have nice things, especially not the Israeli and Palestinian people. In the early 2000s, Israel's Prime Minister Ehud Barak signed the 2000 Camp David Papers. He offered the establishment of a Palestinian state. This is, what, the 37th time? Which would include the entirety of the Gaza Strip and over 90% of the West Bank, with Jerusalem as a shared capital. This would also fall apart, with both sides blaming the other for the failure. At the same time as this was going on, Israel would also withdraw from the Gaza Strip and, following a wave of terrorist attacks, would build the Israeli West Bank barrier. In 2006, a Hezbollah artillery attack and cross-border abduction of 2 Israeli soldiers caused the month-long Second Lebanon War. For the record, this is what is commonly referred to as foreshadowing. In the 2010s, so much effort was put in by Israel to try to establish peace that it resulted in the Abraham Accords, signed by Israel, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Morocco, and Sudan. Yes, even war-torn Sudan found a way to find peace with Israel. This would change the conflict from Arab-Israeli to Arab-freaking Iranian. The amount of foreshadowing going on in here is astounding. I want to point something out. Israel had given West Bank and the Gaza Strip back to the Palestinians, and for the last 20 years or so, they have had to tolerate terrorist attacks from both areas. Israel is now occupying both again, of course, and you need to understand the reason why. Israel is not entirely innocent in this, and the occupation of the West Bank shows this. Even though they proclaimed that land for a Palestinian state, and against UN wishes and arguably international law, Israel continued to establish settlements in the West Bank area, making the population more and more predominantly Israeli, not allowing the Palestinians to become the majority populace. By no means do I agree with this, and it's why many like me dislike Netanyahu. The Gaza Strip is an entirely different story. It brings us to our catalyst, the October 7th, 2023 Hamas attack on Israel that Hezbollah and the Houthis joined. The kidnapping and killing of hundreds of innocent civilians at the hands of terrorists would result in Israel taking Gaza back to flush out the terrorist groups who like to hide among innocent civilians and shoot rockets at Israel from hospitals. All three of these groups are proxy terrorist groups of Iran. I made a video on that and Iran's response on my old channel. I'll be sure to upload that on my new channel here in the near future. The wild thing is, relations with Israel and Iran were not always volatile. In the 1950s to 1970s, they were actually quite friendly with each other, with Iran being one of the first to recognize the State of Israel officially, with only Egypt and Turkey recognizing them prior to Iran. But as life always shows, sometimes wounds run deep. How does Iran tie into all this? Well, let's look into the ancient history of the area again. Remember when I said earlier that the Jews were exiled from their land? This occurred due to the Jewish-Babylonian War in 600 BCE. The king of Judah stopped paying taxes for 3 years to the Babylons, and the Babylons put Jerusalem under siege, eventually capturing it, exiling all the Jews from the area, and destroying Jerusalem. Do you know who descends from the Babylonians? The Assyrians. And who descends from the Assyrians? Well, let me check. Let's see. Iraqis, Syrians, Turks, and fucking Iranians. In conclusion, this whole conflict, as well as current ongoing events, show just how much the American education system has failed the American people. At this point, I'm just going to start referring to it as the American uneducation system. It's absolutely wild that so many think that Israel has itself solely to blame when so many countries, as well as terrorist groups, firmly believe in the three no's and want the entire extermination of Israel and its people to this day. All while not realizing that Israel has tried countless times to be diplomatic, albeit not always fairly, but still always being open to a two-state solution, with 72% of Israeli people and 73% of Palestinian people being on board with it. But we have college students agreeing with countries that refuse to sign a peace treaty that has any form of a state of Israel existence involved in it at all. These people pay tens of thousands of dollars and are basing their education on feel-good PR and full lack of understanding of ancient history. I hope you liked this video. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe so you can catch all my videos. If you have any ideas of military stories I should cover, whether modern or historic, please leave a comment below and I'll give you a shout out in that video. If you'd like to help support my channel, my Cash App and my Venmo are in the video description as well as my bio because race car parts are freaking expensive. As always, stay classy. Peace! This video was extremely heavy for me and it just makes me more upset about the matter. It's absolutely ridiculous that what basically amounts to sibling rivalry kills so many innocent civilians. Maybe next I should do something more peaceful and calm, like why we have the Geneva Conventions or the time we recently showed Russia that we would absolutely body them conventionally. I mean, this country needs proper education on things.